Today, we'll take a look at one of the most efficient LTX 2.3 nodes called LTX Director. This node combines multiple features into a single workflow, including prompt relay, multi-image injection, custom audio support, video size controls, video length settings, and much more. Basically, someone looked at workflow chaos and decided humanity had suffered enough. This is the default example workflow provided by the developer. I simply reorganized it and cleaned it up into subgraphs, so it's much cleaner and easier to navigate. The workflow itself is exactly the same. I'll include the original source link in the description, where you can download it along with the required custom nodes for installation. Instead of guessing the frame count and video length, you can edit everything precisely using a timeline, just like a normal video editor. You can control exactly how many seconds each frame injection appears, along with the prompt assigned to it. You can also drag and drop clips, rearrange them freely, and place everything precisely on the timeline. This makes the workflow much easier to manage, especially for longer or more complex scenes. Here in this video, I want the woman to say a few lines first, and then transition into the gangster dancing to Eurodance music.
So hang on, Jane, I am coming! I don't start the party without me.
Now, let's test a podcast scene. I have a wide shot along with separate close-up shots of both the man and the woman. Let's see how well it handles a dual dialogue scene and transitions between the different camera angles. I dragged the clips around to imitate random dialogue cut scenes. Then, I added the speech prompt to each corresponding image so the dialogue matches the active shot on the timeline.
So I have a question. Why do men say, "I'm fine," like a hostage statement?
Which WAD is to tooting? Because explaining feelings takes longer than dying internally.
Red flags are obvious.
Humans see red flags and call it personality.
Well, that was bad. The dialogue bleeds into the next shot or frame. Maybe I need to adjust the prompt, or maybe I'm using the workflow incorrectly. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's try this again.
So I have a question. Why do men say "I'm fine" like a hostage statement?
As somebody then die when they die.
Because explaining feelings takes longer than dying internally. Red flags are obvious.
Now, let's turn on the global prompt and refine the scene using camera cut instructions, then try again.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Do men say "I'm fine" like a hostage statement?
With you feeling, Kate's cuff fueling ought and turn into Toriaden.
Because explaining feelings takes longer than dying internally. Here in the awesome flying, red flags are obvious.
Ewan see red flags and call it personality.
Let's move on to the next test, a music video. Let's enable the custom audio feature and load the punk rock track I made earlier. Then, I'll add a mix of close-up and wide shots while keeping the same audio synced across the entire sequence. Earlier, it was difficult to prompt camera cuts and scene transitions manually, but now it's mostly about arranging clips directly on the timeline. The workflow automatically creates dynamic camera cuts that feel much more like a real music video. Instead of fighting prompts for every transition, you can focus more on rhythm, pacing, and shot placement. But there's another issue here. You can't use my compression workflow with this setup because it relies on the native LTX preprocess compression node instead. As a result, the rigid and stiff-looking LTX signature comes back again. Here's a comparison video showing the difference between the native compression and the compression method used in my workflow. You you can immediately notice that my workflow produces much more natural motion and camera energy, while the native preprocessing feels flatter and more static. This is why I don't really like the native LTX node compression. There's no real dynamic camera motion. The native image compression node mostly generates subject movement, but the camera itself still feels static. The compression method used in my workflow is different. It uses actual video compression with CRF settings, combined with a fake frame rate that introduces slight motion blur. That subtle blur creates a much more dynamic feeling, almost like a handheld camera. But that's not really a mistake or a flaw. Technically, the native preprocess method is doing the correct thing. It only animates the actions that were explicitly prompted, because the model shouldn't invent motion that the user never asked for. That actually gives the user more precise creative control. In that sense, the rigid motion style is intentional and technically accurate. It's more controlled and predictable. My compression workflow is simply a different creative choice. I personally prefer the added motion and subtle camera sway because I tend to use more vague or loose prompts, especially for dynamic scenes and music videos. So I'm not saying my method is objectively better. It's really just a stylistic preference depending on the type of scene you want to create. As for me, I don't really like using long, highly detailed prompts. I usually work with more vague prompts like "the woman is singing" or "she is speaking," especially when I'm making lip-sync videos. And with my preprocess method, even simple prompts like these can still produce dynamic-looking scenes with natural motion and camera energy. So, that's mainly why I prefer that approach. Anyway, that's enough about the preprocess node for now. This is probably a topic for another video, because I'm rambling too much already. I mainly just wanted to introduce one of the most creative nodes for LTX, the LTX Director node. It works like a timeline editor inside a video editing interface, giving you much more creative control over scene arrangement, timing, camera cuts, prompt flow, and audio synchronization. If you enjoy building cinematic workflows or music videos, this node can seriously level up your workflow process. I'll include the link in the description so you can check it out yourself. That's all for today. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. I'll be sharing more workflows throughout this week. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like and comment below. It really helps me understand what kind of videos and workflows viewers prefer and what they don't. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.